All right, let's begin the show then by putting the spotlight on the entire gaming industry, which is projected to grow at a $7.5 billion valuation by FY28 and a 20% CAGR growth. This is as per reports by Lumikai. In fact, Salone Sehgal, who is a founding general partner at Lumikai, now joins us on the show to discuss that and more. Salone, good to have you on board. Let's just talk a little about how these growth projections really stack up versus the global markets. $7.5 billion valuation by FY28. What is going to propel this growth?
Yeah, no, thank you, Avanne, and thank you, ET, now for having me. India's gaming market has just experienced a seismic shift over the course of the last, I'd say, 2-3 years. And if you were to see the trajectory of the market, let's say over the course of, the last, let's say, decade or so, it's very easy to identify what has caused those major shifts, right? If we look back at, let's say, we're in 2023 right now. If we look back in 2013, India was a market with about an overall smartphone market size of 41 million. We were primarily a feature phone market. 3G was very new. And 3G packs at that point of time were offering only about 400 MB of internet surfing data, where data cost, 1 GB of data cost about $3. Now, if you look at present day, in 2023, there are 700 million smartphones. An average Indian consumes 25 gigabytes of data a month. And entertainment is primarily being led by games. Right. So no longer are Indians now going through the big family television screen, but now entertainment means the small personalized mobile screen, which is being used by 50% of India's population now being under 25, which is essentially the youth. And their biggest consumption pattern in entertainment is gaming. And, over last year, we launched a research report and we discovered that actually India consumed 15 billion gaming apps in 2023 alone. This makes us the second largest mobile gaming market and the fastest growing mobile gaming market in the world. We have around 560 million plus gamers in the country. And out of that, there are 140 million paying users. So there has been a tectonic shift in gaming adoption, gaming consumption, and now even gaming monetization, which has essentially been driving this growth.
And also the report indicates that there is going to be a strong 20% CAGR, and that will be driven primarily by the in-app purchases in casual and mid-core gamings. Can you tell us a little bit more about this?
Yeah, no, and that's a great question. In fact, research actually shows us that there is a growing propensity for gamers to actually spend money on games. This is largely being driven by the proliferation of UPI being used as a primary source of microtransactions. So we have now seen user behavior where there has been a 46% growth in IAPs, which are going to essentially be driving revenue for the Indian games market, and largely being driven by two things. One is an experimentation for new games, whether it's casual games, whether it's mid-core games. And the second is there is an increasing amount of time spent on games, where almost 20-30% year on year. We're also seeing new demographics adopt games. So now about 40% of India's gamers are actually female. And the share of gamers from non-metro cities over the course of where we have undertaken our research has actually grown from 57% to 66% over the course of the last year. And majority of the gamers are within the 18 to 30 year age bracket as well. So they're older, higher paying capacity, and also now adopting to paying in games, which is essentially driving this growth.
There's also a rising maturity then, Salone, in Indian gamers. The average time spent as well gaming has increased. Can you put that into perspective?
Yeah, so the average time spent has increased by about 20%. We see an Indian gamer spending anywhere between 10 to 12 hours per week gaming. This very closely coincides with what we've seen in the Western markets as well for gaming adoption. there has been obviously a lot of proliferation of titles like Battlegrounds Mobile India, a Free Fire, or a Clash of Clans, or a Temple Run, or a Candy Crush, across both casual and mid-core genres, which are essentially driving up increasing consumption. But more importantly, our research also finds that Indian gamers are increasingly showcasing at least a desire to play games which are more India first. So there is an increasing desire for Indian content in games, with almost 60% of our surveyed audience the propensity to play games with with an Indian context, or Indian sensibility, or Indian aesthetics, or Indian palette, which I believe has been a very distinct shift from the previous years.
And at the same time, we're seeing that RMG, or real money gaming, that revenue industry is likely to face a lot of headwinds, largely on account of the recent taxation policies. Are we seeing that that segment has been deeply affected?
So, that's also been reflected in our research as well, where we have projected there to be a very modest growth of 5% in the overall RMG market. The recent impact of taxation is yet to play out, because the GST norms have just come into play from the 1st of October, so it's very early days. However, because of the tax revenue impact, our projections so that there will probably be muted growth. And this is definitely something which is top of mind when it comes to player behavior. When we interviewed players and we undertook consumer research, we discovered that there were players who were actually very heavily indexing on the imposition of GST and TDS to determine their future usage as well. So, I think it is early to say, but there is definitely going to be an adverse impact of that on the industry, and that has been reflected into the research as well.
So given that UPI is the preferred mode of payment, tell us a little bit more about how many people really use that. What is the outlook in terms of in-app purchases and the modes of payment, as we're focusing a lot on digitization?
Absolutely. And I think that is a very, very key trend that we also noticed from our research as well, that UPI is the mode of payment for games. Nearly 62% of users were choosing this method. So, overall easing and the convenience of digital transactions has really unlocked IAPs and microtransactions for the industry. So this is absolutely a very, very key driver for growth in gaming.
And what's the outlook then in terms of future growth for the sector? What are some of the trends that you foresee? What are going to be some of the key growth drivers for the gaming industry?
So, as we discussed, a lot of the growth is, we're anticipating a very strong growth projection for the market, where we expect the industry to now clock about $7.5 billion in just revenue upside. This is largely being led because of a couple of reasons. The first is, we're an incredibly large demographic of very young people, right? 50% of India's population is under 25. And this demographic is mobile first, they're digital natives, and their primary source of entertainment now no longer comes from television, but it is being now driven by mobile games and very interactive forms of entertainment. This is why, as an investor, we're heavily focused on this sector, and we believe that there is a massive potential for the Indian gaming market, and to produce multiple category leaders, whether it is in gaming content. It could be, for example, gaming companies building games for the global markets, or gaming companies building games for the local markets. We have backed companies like a Studio Sera, Giga Fun Studios, or Bombay Play, which are all incredibly experienced founders building games for both these markets. Then we've also backed, companies which are social gaming platforms but disrupting legacy media. Again, it's an increasing trend where we are seeing more and more of the youth embrace interactive and immersive touch points for their primary media consumption. So we backed a platform called Elo, but also, we're very forward thinking in terms of the way we're looking at the sector, where we believe trends like AI, we've backed companies like Supernova, which are leveraging generative AI for edtech. But, looking at those businesses where we see that growth drivers are going to be driven and going to be essentially an amalgamation of a paradigm shift in technology, but also a complete shift in consumption behavior, especially for digital platforms. I think another major shift that is going to be driving this growth that we believe is the demographic expansion that has taken place. Majority of the gamers in India fall within the 18 to 30 age bracket, with a male-female ratio of 60-40, which essentially encompasses all audiences, which essentially means that gaming is no longer a 13-year-old sitting in his basement playing shooter games, but it essentially is everybody from age 12 to age 60 who are enjoying an entertainment medium which is very easily accessible, very low friction points, and also very, very affordable, right, with the unlocking of microtransactions. So a combination of all of this behavior, we believe, is going to really determine what the future of interactive entertainment or gaming will look like over the course of the next decade.